They sold her at sunrise for 10 coins, less than the price of a hunting horse, binding her wrists beneath truce flags as a rival pack claimed her as payment for an old blood debt, believing she was nothing, a quiet girl with no wolf worth naming. But as the moon darkened at noon and the borders closed behind her, the Alpha King felt the bond tear through his chest, his wolf roaring in fury as the elders whispered the truth too late: his Luna had been taken. And while the rival pack mocked her, ordered her to kneel, and discovered their wolves obeyed her without knowing why, war drums began to beat across the frontier, ancient laws were invoked, messengers were executed, and the Alpha King himself rode to reclaim what was never for sale, kneeling before the girl they tried to break and declaring her Luna of the Northern Territories, because they sold her for 10 coins. Unaware they had just chosen the woman who would end a war, crown a queen, and burn the world down if they tried to take her again. The summer heat clung to the wooden walls of the keep like a fever that wouldn't break. Selena pressed herself against the rough timber beside the kitchen door, her breath shallow, her heart a drumbeat in her chest. She shouldn't be listening. Good daughters didn't eavesdrop. Good daughters kept their eyes down and their questions silent. But good daughters weren't sold. 10 coins. Her stepmother's voice carried through the crack in the door, sharp as the kitchen knives Selena spent her days sharpening. That's my final offer, Alpha Cade. Take her or leave her. Selena's fingers dug into the splintered wood. 10 coins. The number echoed in her skull, hollow and cold. Last month, her stepfather had paid 15 for a new hunting horse. 20 for the timber to repair the northern wall. Even the pregnant sow in the pen had cost 12. Even livestock was worth more than her. She's 17, Alpha Cade's voice rumbled, deeper than her stepfather's, textured with something Selena couldn't name. Amusement, perhaps. Or disgust. Shouldn't she have shifted by now? Some bloom late. Her stepmother's lie came easily practiced. She's healthy. Obedient. She won't cause trouble. Selena wanted to laugh, but the sound stuck in her throat like a chicken bone. Bloom late. As if her wolflessness were merely a delayed spring, as if any day now she might sprout fangs and fur and finally become something worth keeping. She'd stopped believing that fairy tale years ago. And if she never shifts? Cade pressed. A pause. Then, that's your problem, not mine. 10 coins, Alpha. I have 3 daughters of my own to feed, and this one eats more than she's worth. Selena's stepsisters ate twice what she did. They took second helpings while Selena scraped the burnt bits from the bottom of the pot. But truth had never mattered much in this house, not where she was concerned. She'd been 6 when her father brought home his new wife, a widow from the Western Territories with 3 daughters and a smile that never reached her eyes. Selena's mother had died giving birth to her, a fact her stepmother mentioned often, usually while assigning Selena another impossible task. As if somehow, at 6 years old, Selena should have known better than to be born. Her father had promised things would get better. He'd promised his new wife would love Selena like her own. He'd been dead for 3 years now, and Selena had learned that promises were just pretty words people used to make themselves feel better about their lives. Let me see her. Selena's blood turned to ice. She jerked away from the door, but her stepmother was already moving, heels clicking against the stone floor like the countdown to an execution. The door swung open. Her stepmother stood framed in the threshold, her face a careful mask of maternal concern that never fooled anyone. Least of all Selena. There you are, dear. The endearment dripped with false honey. Come. Alpha Cade wants to meet you. Selena's legs moved on instinct, carrying her into the kitchen where the man who'd just purchased her stood beside the scarred wooden table. He was taller than she'd expected, broader, with dark hair that brushed his shoulders and eyes the color of winter storms. Not old, maybe 30 at most, but there was something ancient in the way he looked at her. Something that made her want to run. She kept her eyes down instead. Good daughters didn't run. Look at me, girl. It wasn't a request. Selena lifted her gaze, met those storm-dark eyes, and felt something shift in the air between them. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. He studied her like she was a horse he was considering, taking in her too-thin frame, her rough-spun dress, the burn scar on her left hand from when she'd been too slow pulling the bread from the oven. His expression gave nothing away. "She's small," he said finally. "She's sturdy." Her stepmother moved closer, her hand landing on Selina's shoulder with what might have looked like affection to someone who didn't know better. Selina felt the bite of her stepmother's nails through the thin fabric. A reminder. Behave. Smile. Make this work or else. Good with children. Excellent cook. She'll make a fine addition to your pack. Selina wondered what lie her stepmother had told him. What story explained why a pack alpha from the Northern Territories would ride 3 days to their small frontier keep for a bride? She doubted it was the truth, that her stepmother wanted her gone, had wanted her gone since the day she'd married Selina's father, and would have given her away for free if it wouldn't have looked suspicious. At least this way, she'd gotten 10 coins out of it. "Can you read?" Cade asked, his question directed at Selina for the first time. She nodded. Her father had taught her before he died, during the brief years when he'd still looked at her and seen his daughter instead of his mistake. "Speak," her stepmother hissed. "Yes, Alpha." The words came out smaller than Selina intended, but they came. Something flickered across Cade's face, too quick to read. He turned back to her stepmother, pulled a small leather pouch from his belt, and dropped it on the table. It landed with a dull clink. 10 coins, probably. Selina didn't look. "She rides with me at dawn." "Of course." Her stepmother was already reaching for the pouch, her fingers eager. "Selina, go pack your things." Selina turned toward the door, her mind numb, her body moving on automatic. She had one bag. It wouldn't take long to fill. Behind her, she heard the coins spill across the table, heard her stepmother's satisfied hum. 10 coins. The price of a wolfless girl nobody wanted. The price of her freedom, or her cage. She supposed she'd find out which at dawn. The betrayal at sunrise. Dawn broke cold and colorless over the keep, the sky bruised purple at the edges like a week-old wound. Selina stood in the courtyard with her single bag clutched against her chest, watching the northern road for Alpha Cade's return. He never came. Instead, as the sun crept higher, different horses appeared on the horizon. Different riders. Their banner snapped in the morning wind, Black Wolf on crimson field, and Selina's stomach dropped like a stone down a well. The Blood Moon Pack. Everyone knew their colors. Everyone feared their name. Her stepmother emerged from the keep, her smile too wide, too bright. She'd worn her good dress, Selina noticed. The blue one she saved for territorial councils and funerals. Behind her, Selina's stepsisters clustered in the doorway, their faces pale and curious. "There's been a change of plans, dear," her stepmother said, and the endearment felt like a blade between Selina's ribs. The riders reached the gates. 6 of them, all male, all armed despite the white truce flags tied to their saddles. The man at the front dismounted with predatory grace, his silver hair pulled back from a face too young for such coloring. His eyes found Selina immediately, cold and assessing. "The wolfless one?" His voice carried across the courtyard like a whip crack. As promised. Her stepmother's hand closed around Selina's upper arm, her grip iron-tight. 17 years old. Unmated. Never shifted. Selina tried to pull away. "What's happening?" "You said Alpha Cade." "Change of plans," her stepmother repeated, dragging Selina forward. "Alpha Cade sent his regards. And his proxy." Lies. Selina could taste them like ash on her tongue. Alpha Cade had paid for her last night, had looked her in the eye and told her she'd ride with him at dawn. Unless he'd never meant to keep her at all. The silver-haired man pulled a length of rope from his saddle. "Hands." "No." Selina stumbled backward, but her stepmother shoved her forward, hard enough that she nearly fell. "No, please. Don't make this difficult." Her stepmother's voice dropped to a hiss only Selina could hear. "You're paying a debt that's owed. Your father's debt. You should be grateful we're letting you do it alive." The rope burned as it wrapped around Selina's wrists, tight enough to bite. She wanted to fight, to scream, but her stepsisters were watching and her stepmother's warning echoed in her skull. Difficult girls disappeared. Difficult girls had accidents. At least this way, she'd survive. Maybe. She's nothing, her stepmother announced to the assembled riders, her voice carrying the weight of pronouncement. No wolf worth claiming. But blood is blood, and the debt is settled. Blood debt. The words clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle Selena had never known she was solving. Her father's gambling. His drinking. The debts he'd left behind when he died, debts her stepmother had been paying off piece by piece for 3 years. Except she wasn't paying them. She was using Selena to settle them instead. The Northern Territories accept the terms, the silver-haired man said, his hand closing around the rope binding Selena's wrists. The blood debt between Grey March and Blood Moon is satisfied. Grey March. Her father's original pack, the one he'd left before Selena was born. The one whose debts apparently passed to daughters who'd never even known they existed. No. The word tore out of Selena's throat, too late, too small. No, you can't. It's done. Her stepmother's face was stone. You're legally claimed property now, girl. Bloodman's problem, not mine. Property. The word hung in the air like a noose. The silver-haired man hauled Selena toward his horse. She tried to dig her heels in, but he was stronger, faster, and her bound hands made resistance pointless. He lifted her onto his saddle like she weighed nothing, then swung up behind her. Wait. Selena twisted to look back at the keep, at her stepmother's satisfied smile, at her stepsisters who wouldn't meet her eyes. My bag. You won't need it, the man said, and spurred his horse forward. The gates opened. The truce flag snapped overhead. Selena watched the only home she'd ever known shrink behind her, her stepmother already turning away, already counting whatever payment she'd received for selling her stepdaughter to settle a dead man's gambling debts. 10 coins from Alpha Cade. Probably more from Blood Moon for the transfer. Her stepmother had made a profit on both ends. They rode north, past the territorial markers, past the scent-marked trees that separated packlands. With each mile, Selena felt the invisible chains tighten. Claimed property. Legally bound. She'd crossed the borders now, entered Blood Moon territory under truce terms and debt settlements. No one would come looking for her. No one would ask questions. She was gone, and no one would care. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Selena kept her eyes forward, her jaw clenched against the tears that wanted to fall. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Wouldn't let them see her break. But then the light changed. It happened slowly at first, the bright noon sun dimming like someone had drawn a curtain across the sky. The riders around her muttered, pulling their horses to a stop. Selena looked up and felt her breath catch. The moon was eating the sun. In the middle of the day, with the sun at its peak, darkness crept across the sky like spilled ink. The moon's shadow swallowed the light degree by degree, turning noon into twilight, twilight into night. Around her, the Blood Moon riders shifted uneasily. Horses stamped and snorted. Someone whispered a prayer to the old gods. The silver-haired man's arms tightened around Selena, his voice low and edged with something that might have been fear. The Blood Moon rises at noon. The old stories were true. Selena stared up at the impossible sky, at the black sun ringed in dying fire, and felt something stir in her chest. Something that had been sleeping. Something that was beginning to wake. The darkness was absolute now, complete. And in that darkness, Selena heard a voice that wasn't a voice, felt a pull that wasn't quite physical. Something was calling her name. The Alpha King who already chose her. The war room in Grey March Keep smelled of old blood and older grudges. Alpha King Gomez Thorne stood at the head of the ancient stone table, his hands braced against its scarred surface, listening to pack leaders argue about borders they'd been fighting over for 3 generations. He wasn't listening anymore. Something was wrong. The Blood Moon incursions must be answered with force, Alpha Garrett of Ironridge was saying, his fist striking the table for emphasis. They've taken 2 of our hunting grounds this month alone. They've taken nothing that wasn't theirs by right of old treaty, Alpha Mira of Shadowfen countered. Your pack keeps pushing past the river markers. Gomez's wolf snarled inside his chest, a sound that had nothing to do with territorial disputes. It had been restless all morning, pacing and clawing at his insides like something caged and desperate. Now it was worse. Now it felt like his ribs were cracking open. Pain lanced through his chest, sharp enough that his fingers dug grooves into the stone table. Not his pain. Someone else's. Somewhere distant, someone was afraid. Someone was his. Alpha King. Garrett's voice came from very far away. Are you? The bond pulled. Gomez had felt stirrings before, faint echoes of connection that his wolf recognized even when his human mind didn't understand. Whispers of something meant to be, growing stronger as the years passed. He'd learned to ignore it, to push it down, because the pull had no direction, no source. Just a persistent ache that told him his mate existed somewhere in the world and he couldn't find her. Now the bond wasn't whispering. It was screaming. His wolf slammed against his control, demanding shift, demanding blood, demanding he move. Now, find her, protect her, kill anyone who'd touched what was his. Gomez. A hand on his shoulder. Elder Renara, the ancient she-wolf who'd advised 3 generations of Alpha Kings, her clouded eyes seeing far more than they should. Breathe. He couldn't breathe. The pain in his chest was a living thing, terror and betrayal and helplessness all twisted together. Not his emotions. Hers. She was terrified. What's happening to him? Someone asked, but Gomez had stopped caring who was speaking. His vision had gone red at the edges, his wolf so close to the surface that his bones ached with the almost shift. Everyone out. Renara's command cut through the chaos. Now. The pack leaders hesitated, confused, but something in Renara's voice allowed no argument. Chairs scraped. Boots echoed on stone. The heavy door groaned shut, leaving only silence and the sound of Gomez's ragged breathing. Tell me, Renara said quietly, what you feel. Pain. The word came out more growl than speech. Fear. He couldn't finish. Couldn't put words to the violation he felt through the bond, the sense of wrongness that made his skin crawl. You're Luna. It wasn't a question. Gomez's head snapped up. I don't have a Luna. You do. Renara moved to the window, her gnarled hands folded behind her back. Outside, the sky was growing strange, the sunlight dimming though it was barely noon. You've had one for months now, haven't you? The pull you've been feeling. The restlessness. He told no one. Had barely admitted it to himself. I can't find her, he said, and hated how the words sounded. Lost. Desperate. The bond has no direction. I've searched. Because she hasn't been claimed yet. Renara turned back to him, her expression grave. A Luna bond can exist uncompleted, dormant, waiting for acknowledgement. But once claimed, she paused, and in that pause Gomez felt the bond twist like a knife in his gut. Once claimed by another, the bond activates fully. To protect her. To lead you to her. Claimed. The word tasted like ash and murder. By who? That, Renara said softly, is what your wolf is trying to tell you. The pain spiked again, and this time Gomez caught fragments through it. Images. Sensations. Rope burning against skin. The smell of horses and male wolves she didn't know. Darkness falling where it shouldn't. Fear, so much fear, and underneath it a terrible resignation that made his wolf howl with rage. She thought no one was coming for her. She thought she was alone. North, he heard himself say. She's north. Moving away from, the bond pulled harder, more insistent, and suddenly he knew. Blood Moon territory. Renara's eyes widened, just slightly. It was the most shock he'd ever seen her display. You're certain? I can feel her. And he could, now that he'd stopped fighting it. Could feel her like a compass point in his chest, distant but unmistakable. Moving farther away with every passing moment. They have her. Blood Moon has my Luna. That's impossible. But Renara's voice was thin, uncertain. The old laws. I don't care about the old laws. Gomez pushed away from the table, his decision already made. I'm going after her. Wait. Renara moved faster than someone her age should be able to, blocking the door. If Blood Moon has taken Aluna, if they've claimed her through legal means, through debt or contract, you can't simply take her back. It would mean war. Full war, between all the packs. The alliance would shatter. Then it shatters. Gomez. She rarely used his name. The sound of it stopped him. Listen to me. Aluna cannot be sold. Cannot be traded or transferred or claimed as property. The old laws are absolute on this. If someone has done this, if they've broken the oldest law. She trailed off, her face pale. The world intends to burn. The room had grown darker. Gomez looked toward the window and saw what shouldn't be possible. The sun was disappearing, eaten by the moon's shadow in the middle of the day. Darkness spread across the sky like a stain, unnatural and wrong. An eclipse at noon. On the days Luna was stolen. The old magic was waking up. Then let it burn, Gomez said quietly, his eyes fixed on the dying light. I'm going to get her back. The rival pack's deadly mistake. The Blood Moon stronghold rose from the northern cliffs like a threat carved in stone. Where Selina's stepmother's keep had been wood and wishful thinking, this was ancient rock and iron, built to withstand sieges that had happened before her grandmother was born. The walls were black granite, slick with moss and the remnants of old bloodstains that nothing could quite wash away. Selina was dragged through the gates still bound, still mounted behind the silver-haired man whose name she didn't know and didn't want to learn. The courtyard was packed dirt and watching eyes, dozens of wolves in human form stopping their work to stare at the wolfless girl who'd been delivered like a parcel. No one looked surprised. They'd been expecting her. Take her to the kitchens, the silver-haired man said, finally. Hands from catching on the rough stones. Around them, the stronghold bustled with activity that felt wrong somehow. Agitated. Wolves kept glancing at the sky where the eclipse had finally ended, leaving the sun bleeding back into view like a wound reopening. The woman led her down narrow stairs into the belly of the stronghold. The kitchens were massive, carved directly into the rock, with 3 hearth fires burning despite the summer heat. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of roasting meat. You'll work here, the woman said, finally cutting the ropes at Selina's wrists. The relief was immediate and short-lived. Scrubbing, hauling, whatever needs doing. You eat after everyone else is fed. You sleep in the storage room. You don't speak unless spoken to. She paused, her scarred face unreadable. And you don't go near the pack alpha. Understood. Selina nodded, rubbing feeling back into her wrists. Good. There's a bucket. The floor needs scrubbing. The woman left. Selina stared at the bucket, at the stone floor stained with years of grease and gods knew what else, and felt the last fragile piece of hope inside her chest crack clean through. This was her life now. This was what 10 coins and a blood debt had bought her. She picked up the bucket. The hours blurred together in a haze of hot water and lye soap and floors that never seemed to get clean. Other kitchen workers moved around her like she was furniture, occasionally barking orders, but mostly ignoring her existence. Selina kept her head down and her mouth shut and tried not to think about her stepmother counting coins while Selina scrubbed stones on her knees. Evening came. The pack alpha arrived. Selina heard him before she saw him, the way conversations died in waves as he descended the stairs. She was in the corner, emptying yet another bucket of filthy water when he entered the kitchen proper. Alpha Cain Blood Moon was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with the same silver hair as his riders, but eyes like chips of obsidian. He moved through his stronghold like a man who'd never questioned his right to take up space, to command attention, to own everything his gaze touched. His eyes found Selina immediately. So this is Grey March's payment. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, stopping close enough that Selina had to tilt her head back to meet his stare. The wolfless daughter. Tell me, girl, do you know what your father did to earn this debt? Selina said nothing. The scarred woman had told her not to speak unless spoken to, but this felt like a trap either way. He killed 3 of my wolves, Cain continued, his voice conversational. Pleasant, even. ambushed them at a territorial border, slit their throats, left them for the crows. Your father was very good at running away from consequences. Lucky for you, we believe in settling accounts. He smiled, and there was nothing human in it. You'll work until the debt is paid. Might take 20 years. Might take 50. You're young. You'll last. 50 years. Selena's vision swam. Kneel, Cain said. The kitchen had gone silent. Every eye was on her, waiting. Selena's knees felt locked. Some stubborn, suicidal part of her refused to bend, even though she knew what defiance cost. Even though she could see the anticipation in Cain's face, the eagerness for her to give him an excuse. I said kneel. The command hit like a physical force, layered with alpha dominance that should have driven Selena to the ground. She felt it wash over her, felt her body try to respond, try to submit. And then something else rose up inside her. It wasn't her wolf. She didn't have a wolf. But it was something, some deep instinct that snarled no, something that pushed back against Cain's dominance with a force that made her gasp. The kitchen lights flickered. Cain's eyes widened, just slightly. Around them, wolves who'd been watching with bored interest suddenly went still, their postures changing. Alert. Wary. Confused. Kneel, Cain repeated, and this time there was uncertainty beneath the command. Selena tried. Her legs shook with the effort of staying upright, her body caught between the alpha's order and whatever force had awakened inside her. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She didn't kneel. Couldn't kneel. A low growl rippled through the kitchen, but it wasn't coming from Cain. It was coming from the other wolves, their eyes reflecting strange light, their bodies tense like they were waiting for something. Their wolves were reacting to her presence, but not with aggression. With deference. With recognition. What are you? Cain breathed, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Selena heard fear in an alpha's voice. She didn't have an answer. Didn't understand what was happening, why wolves were backing away from her, why the scarred woman had dropped to one knee without seeming to realize it, why Cain looked like he'd just opened a box expecting a kitten and found a viper instead. I don't know, Selena whispered. Above them, beyond the stone walls, the sun was setting. But in the west, the moon was already rising. Full and blood-red and 3 days too early. The Blood Moon Pack had claimed a girl they thought was worthless. Chapter 5, The First Blood of War. The messenger arrived at Bloodman's gates 3 hours after sunset, his horse foam-flecked and heaving. He wore the silver and black of Grey March, and the white flag tied to his spear should have guaranteed his safety under the oldest laws of pack diplomacy. Should have. Alpha Cain met him in the courtyard, still unnerved from his encounter with the wolfless girl in the kitchens. His wolves were acting strange, restless in a way that had nothing to do with the unseasonable blood moon hanging fat and red in the sky. Message from Alpha King Gomez Thorn, the messenger announced, his voice steady despite the dozens of hostile wolves surrounding him. He pulled a sealed scroll from his saddlebag, the wax stamped with the Grey March crest. He demands. Demands? Cain's laugh was sharp. The King of Grey March demands nothing from me. We're separate packs, separate territories. He has no authority here. He invokes the law of Luna rights, the messenger continued, his jaw tight. Ancient law, older than the territorial treaties, older than the packs themselves. The courtyard went still. Cain's hand closed around the scroll, but he didn't open it. There is no Luna in Blood Moon territory. You took her this morning. 17 years old. Wolfless. Transferred under false debt settlement. The messenger's eyes were hard. You took Alpha King Thorn's bonded mate. The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Cain ripped open the scroll. His eyes scanned the contents once, twice, and with each line his face went paler. Around him, his beta wolves shifted uneasily, sensing their alpha's fear. The message was short, precise. Written in Gomez Thorn's own hand, the ink still dark and fresh. You have taken what is mine, asterisk. Return my Luna by dawn, unharmed, or I will invoke the blood right, asterisk. I will come for her, asterisk. I will take your territory stone by stone, asterisk. I will burn your stronghold to ash, asterisk. Your wolves will kneel or die, asterisk. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat, asterisk. This is a promise, asterisk. You have until sunrise, asterisk. At the bottom, a single additional line, written larger than the rest. Touch her, and I will make your death last years, asterisk. Kane's hands shook. The blood right. It hadn't been invoked in 3 generations, not since the Great Pack Wars that had killed thousands and redrawn every territorial border from the mountains to the sea. It was the nuclear option of pack law, the right of an alpha king to wage total war in defense of his Luna. And it superseded everything. Every treaty. Every alliance. Every oath of neutrality. There's a mistake, Kane said, but his voice was thin. Unconvincing. The girl has no wolf. She can't be a Luna. It's impossible. The bond doesn't lie. The messenger's words were cold. And Alpha King Thorn felt her taken. Felt her fear. His wolf nearly tore through the War Council to reach her. He paused, letting that sink in. You didn't just take any girl, Alpha Kane. You took a king's bonded mate. The old magic has marked her. That's why the moon turned dark at noon. That's why it rises red tonight. Kane looked up at the blood moon, understanding clicking into place with sickening clarity. The girl's strange effect on his wolves. Her inability to submit. The way the very air had seemed to resist when he tried to force her to kneel. They'd thought she was worthless. They'd thought she was payment for a debt. They'd bought themselves a war. This changes nothing, Kane said, but even he could hear the desperate edge in his words. She was legally transferred. We paid for her. The debt settlement was witnessed. A Luna cannot be sold, the messenger interrupted. Cannot be traded. Cannot be claimed as property. This is absolute law, written in the oldest codes. Any contract involving a Luna is void. Any transfer is theft. His hand moved to his sword. And theft of a Luna is an act of war. Kane's mind raced. Gomez Thorn commanded the largest pack alliance in 3 territories. If he invoked the blood right, if he called his banners, Blood Moon would be outnumbered 5-1. Maybe worse. And in a war over a stolen Luna, no pack would dare side with Blood Moon. The old laws were too sacred. The consequences too severe. Take her, Kane said quickly. Take the girl. Tell Alpha King Thorn it was a misunderstanding. Tell him. The messenger's sword was out before Kane finished speaking. My Alpha sent me with a message, the messenger said softly. Not a negotiation. You're under truce flag, Kane's beta snarled, moving forward. You can't. Can't I? The messenger smiled, and it was the smile of a man who'd already accepted his death. Alpha King Thorn gave me a choice. Deliver the message and return home safely. Or make sure Blood Moon understands that the truce is over. He dropped the white flag. It fell to the dirt, pristine cloth landing in a puddle of mud and blood from the day's butchered deer. The borders are closed, the messenger continued. As of sunset, any wolf attempting to leave Blood Moon territory will be killed on sight. Any wolf attempting to enter will be turned back or executed. You are contained, Alpha Kane. You and every wolf loyal to you. He looked around the courtyard, meeting the eyes of wolves who were beginning to understand what their Alpha had done. Alpha King Thorn mobilizes his forces at dawn. He rides for Blood Moon with 3,000 wolves at his back. 3,000, Kane's voice cracked. He's calling in every oath, every alliance, every favor owed across 5 territories. The Council of Alphas has already convened. They've reviewed the law. They've confirmed the bond. The messenger's smile widened. They've authorized total war. By sunrise tomorrow, this stronghold will be surrounded. You can surrender the Luna and beg for mercy. Or you can fight and be destroyed. We can negotiate, Kane tried. We can. The messenger drove his sword into the ground between them, the blade sinking deep into the packed earth. That's Alpha King Thorn's response to negotiation. You have until dawn. After that, your choices are surrender or death. He turned toward his horse, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. And Alpha Kane? The king asked me to tell you one more thing. What? If you've harmed her, if she has so much as a bruise, he'll start with your children. He'll make you watch them die before he lets you follow. The messenger swung onto his horse and kicked it into a gallop. He was through the gates before anyone thought to stop him, disappearing into the night like a ghost bearing witness to the end of days. Cain stood in the courtyard, the sword still planted in the ground before him, the dropped truce flag soaking up mud at his feet. Around him, his wolves waited for orders that he couldn't give. 3,000 wolves by dawn. The blood right invoked. The borders closed. War was coming. And in the kitchens below, scrubbing floors on her knees, the cause of it all had no idea that an alpha king was burning the world down to bring her home. They were beginning to suspect they'd made a terrible mistake. The girl who would not break. They locked Selena in the storage room after the incident in the kitchen. No explanation, just the scarred woman's rough hands shoving her into the cramped space among sacks of grain and hanging herbs, the door slamming shut with iron finality. Selena didn't ask why. She was learning that questions only earned more bruises. The room was dark except for the thin line of moonlight bleeding through a crack in the stone. Red moonlight. Wrong moonlight. Selena pressed her back against the rough wall and tried to make sense of what had happened, why wolves had looked at her like she was something other than what she was. She was nothing. Her stepmother had made that clear. Cain had confirmed it. So why had she been unable to kneel? Hours passed. The stronghold beyond her prison door had erupted into chaos shortly after sunset, running footsteps, shouted orders, the unmistakable sounds of an army preparing for something. War, maybe. Or siege. Selena didn't know enough about pack politics to guess. She only knew that whatever was happening, it was worse than anything she'd seen before. The door opened near midnight. A young wolf stumbled in, barely more than a boy, 16 at most. Blood soaked his left side, dark and spreading, and his face was gray with pain. They said, he gasped, clutching his ribs. They said, hide you here. Together. Out of the way. Selena was on her feet before she decided to move. You're bleeding. Training accident. His laugh was wet, painful. Alpha's on edge. Made us run drills. Someone's claws went too deep. He slid down the wall, leaving a red smear on the stone. It's fine. I'll heal. But he wouldn't. Selena could see it in the way the blood kept coming, too fast, too much. Whatever had torn him open had gone deep enough that even wolf healing couldn't keep pace. Let me see. You're wolfless. He said it without cruelty, just stating fact. You can't help. I can try. Maybe it was the loss of blood making him compliant. Maybe he was just too tired to argue. He let Selena ease him onto his back, let her peel away the shredded fabric of his shirt to expose the wound beneath. It was bad. For parallel gashes across his ribs, deep enough that Selena could see bone. The boy, no, not boy, wolf, she had to remember they were always wolves even when they looked human, was dying. Slowly, but certainly. I don't have supplies, Selena said, looking around the storage room. Grain, herbs, dried meat. Nothing useful for. Wait. Herbs. Her father had taught her before he died, back when he'd still sometimes remembered she existed. Basic field medicine, the kind humans used before pack healers. He'd said it was important for her to know, since she'd never have a wolf's healing. Since she'd always be breakable. Selena moved quickly, grabbing yarrow for bleeding, camphor for tissue repair, garlic for infection. She crushed them between her palms, mixing them with grain alcohol from an earthen jug, creating a paste that looked terrible and smelled worse. This will hurt, she warned. The wolf's eyes were closed. Doesn't matter. It mattered to Selena. She spread the paste as gently as she could, her hands steady despite her racing heart. The wolf tensed, his breath hissing between clenched teeth, but he didn't cry out. Pack wolves learned early not to show weakness. Why are you helping me? He asked when she'd finished bandaging the wound with strips torn from her own dress. Everyone says you're just payment. Just debt settlement. That you're worthless. Selena's hands stilled. Maybe I am. Doesn't mean you deserve to bleed out in a storage room. They'll punish you. For touching me. For using supplies. Probably. So why? Because, Selena said quietly, sitting back on her heels, someone being cruel to me doesn't mean I have to be cruel back. That's how it works, isn't it? Hurt people, and it never stops. Someone has to choose different. The wolf stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Outside, the red moon climbed higher. Its light fell through the crack in the stone, painting everything crimson. It touched Selena's hands first, still stained with the wolf's blood and the green-brown paste of crushed herbs. Then something impossible happened. The wound began to close. Not quickly, not dramatically. But the bleeding stopped, and the edges of the torn flesh started to knit together, faster than even wolf healing should allow. The wolf gasped, looking down at his side with wide eyes. What did you? I don't know. Selena backed away, her hands trembling. The moonlight followed her, a spotlight she couldn't escape. I didn't do anything. The door slammed open. The scarred woman stood in the threshold, her expression thunder. Behind her, 2 male wolves, both larger, both armed. They took in the scene, the injured wolf, Selena's bloody hands, the scattered herbs. You were told not to speak, the scarred woman said. Not to touch anyone. Not to use pack resources. He was dying. Not your concern. She nodded to the men. Bring her. They hauled Selena upright, rough hands on her arms, dragging her from the storage room. The injured wolf tried to protest, tried to stand, but he was too weak despite his healing wound. She saved me, Selena heard him say as they pulled her into the corridor. She didn't have to, but she... His voice cut off as they turned a corner. They took her to the courtyard. The same place she'd arrived that morning, though it felt like years ago. Cain was there, surrounded by his beta wolves, all of them tense and armed. He looked at Selena like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve and a threat he couldn't eliminate. The boy in the storage room, Cain said without preamble. His wounds are healing. Impossibly fast. What did you do? Nothing. I used herbs, bandaged. Don't lie. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides. My wolves felt it. The power spike. Something in that room, something connected to you, healed one of my pack members. His hand closed around her throat, not quite choking but close. What? Are you? Selena met his eyes and saw her own confusion reflected back. I don't know. Above them, the blood moon pulsed. Once. Twice. Like a heartbeat. Around the courtyard, wolves dropped to their knees. Not commanded. Not forced. Their wolves simply recognized something their human minds couldn't understand, and their bodies responded accordingly. Even Cain's grip loosened. Even he felt it, the pull toward submission that he didn't want to name. The messenger said you're a Luna, Cain whispered, his voice raw. That's impossible. Lunas are born, not made. They shift. They have power from the beginning. His eyes searched hers, desperate for denial. You're just a wolfless girl. You're nothing. Then why, Selena asked quietly, are your wolves kneeling? She didn't understand it. Didn't understand any of this. But she understood one thing. Mercy had awakened something. Compassion had called down moonlight. Choosing kindness in a place built on cruelty had made the impossible real. She was still nothing. But nothing was starting to look like something the world had never seen before. The Alpha King comes for his queen. Dawn broke gray and cold, and with it came an army. Selena watched from the courtyard where Cain had left her chained to a post like livestock, her wrists bound in iron that burned against her skin. Around her, the Blood Moon pack scrambled to defensive positions, wolves running along the walls with weapons and panic in equal measure. She'd spent the night listening to arguments behind closed doors. Cain's beta wolves urging surrender. Cain himself insisting there had to be another way, that giving up the girl would look weak, that Blood Moon didn't bow to threats. Now, as the sun climbed higher and the first ranks of gray March wolves appeared on the horizon like a silver tide, Cain stood on the battlements looking like a man watching his own execution approach. They came in formation. Disciplined. Silent. 3,000 wolves in human form, armed and armored, moving with the coordination of a force that had trained together for years. Their banners snapped in the morning wind. Silver wolf on black field, the colors of gray March, but Selena saw others too. Ironridge's Crimson Bear, Shadowfen's Green Serpent. A dozen other packs, all flying their colors beside Grey Marches, all united under a single purpose. They'd come for her. The thought was absurd. Impossible. No one came for girls like Selena. Girls who were worth less than hunting horses, who were sold to settle debts, who scrubbed floors until their hands bled. But the army kept coming. At their head rode a man on a black warhorse, and even from a distance Selena felt something in her chest pull tight, like a string drawn taut between them. She couldn't see his face yet, but her body knew him. Recognized him with a certainty that bypassed logic entirely. The Bond, some instinct whispered. That's the Bond. The army stopped 300 yards from the gates. Perfect range for archers, close enough to attack, far enough to talk. The man on the black horse dismounted with fluid grace and walked forward alone, unarmed, his hands open at his sides. Selena's breath caught. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes that she could feel even from across the distance. Storm-gray eyes that swept the battlements, the gates, the courtyard beyond, searching. When his gaze found her, the world stopped. The bond didn't snap into place so much as explode, a detonation in Selena's chest that stole her breath and made her knees buckle. Safety crashed over her in waves, visceral, absolute, so overwhelming she gasped. Recognition followed, the bone-deep knowledge that this man, this stranger, was hers in a way that transcended choice or reason. Home, her heart said, and meant it. The man's eyes flared wide. His whole body went rigid, his hands clenching into fists at his sides, and Selena knew that he felt it too. The bond completing, snapping into full strength now that they were close enough to see each other, close enough for the old magic to confirm what it had been whispering for months. Alpha King Gomez Thorne. Kane's voice carried from the battlements, trying for authority and landing somewhere near desperation. You come with an army to our gates. This is an act of war. Gomez didn't look away from Selena. You took what's mine. We paid for her. Legal debt settlement, witnessed and recorded. She was never for sale. His voice cut through Kane's excuses like a blade through silk. She was always mine. He moved forward, ignoring the arrows trained on him from the walls, ignoring Kane's shouted warnings. His eyes stayed locked on Selena as he crossed the distance between them, and with each step the bond grew stronger, pulling tighter, until Selena thought her ribs might crack from the pressure of it. Open the gates, Gomez called, still not looking at anything but her. Or I tear them down. You can't. Open them. This time it wasn't a request. It was a command layered with alpha dominance, so strong that wolves on both sides of the wall flinched. Now. Silence. Then the groan of iron and wood as the gates swung inward. Gomez stepped through into the courtyard, and the blood moon wolves parted before him like water. Not because they were commanded. Because their wolves recognized what Selena was only beginning to understand. He was an alpha king. And he'd come for his queen. He crossed the courtyard and stopped 3 feet from where Selena was chained, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. Taking in the iron at her wrists, the bruises on her arms, the exhaustion carved into her face. Something murderous flickered across his features. Did they hurt you? His voice was soft. Dangerous. Selena shook her head. It wasn't entirely true. Her wrists were raw, her body ached from sleeping on stone floors, her soul felt scraped hollow, but compared to what could have happened, what might still happen, it seemed like a mercy. Don't lie to me, Luna. He said the title like a prayer. Like a promise. Not ever. Luna. The word rattled around in Selena's head, refusing to make sense. She wasn't a Luna. Lunas were powerful. Special. Born to lead packs and stand beside alpha kings. Selena was just a girl worth 10 coins. I don't understand, she whispered. I know. Gomez reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch away, and when she didn't he cupped her face with surprising gentleness. His hands were warm, calloused, steady. Safe. But you will. I promise you will. Then he did something that made the entire courtyard gasp. He dropped to one knee before her. An alpha king, kneeling to a chained wolfless girl in the dirt of his enemy's stronghold. "My name is Gomez Thorn," he said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Alpha King of Grey March and the Northern Territories. And you are my Luna, my fated mate, the other half of my soul." He looked up at her, and Selena saw something fierce and tender in his eyes. "I should have found you sooner. Should have protected you from this. But I'm here now, and I swear to you on my life, on my pack, on every wolf who follows me, no one will ever hurt you again." Selena's vision blurred. "I'm nobody. I'm wolfless. I'm mine." He said it with absolute certainty. "You're mine, Selena. And I am yours. The bond chose us for each other before we were born. The moon itself claims you as Luna." He glanced at her chains, and his jaw tightened. "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Gomez's hands closed around the iron. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the metal began to glow, heating under his grip, and Selena smelled burning flesh, but he didn't flinch, didn't stop, until the chains snapped like twigs. The iron fell away. Selena's wrists were free. Gomez rose, still holding her gaze, and raised his voice so every wolf could hear. "This woman is Selena, Luna of the Northern Territories. She stands under my protection. Any wolf who harms her answers to me. Any pack that shelters her enemy becomes my enemy." He turned, including Cain and every blood moon wolf in his declaration. She was stolen through illegal debt settlement, sold in violation of the oldest laws. That debt is void. That claim is void. She belongs to no one but herself and the mate bond that chose us both. He looked back at Selena, and despite the army at his back, despite the 3,000 wolves waiting beyond the gates, in that moment it felt like they were the only two people in the world. "I know you don't know me yet," he said quietly. "I know you're scared and confused and probably want to run. But I'm asking you to trust me. Just for today. Just long enough to get you somewhere safe." His hand extended, palm up. "An offer, not a demand. Will you come with me?" Selena looked at his hand, at his face, at the bond humming between them like a living thing, promising safety and belonging and a home she'd never thought she'd have. She'd been sold, betrayed, chained. And now an alpha king knelt before her and called her queen. Selena took his hand. "Yes,